You see, when God puts Israel back together again, I was explaining this to somebody, it's like Israel's been divided, a body's been divided. Well, bodies, if I sever my head from my heart, I'm not going to live very long. When a nation is divided amongst itself, it's just destroyed. So it was only a matter of time when the lost tribes left the house of Judah that both would die. First of all, the lost tribes through their idolatry, because they introduced paganism and they got rid of the Levites. And secondly, later on, Judah was worse than her adulterous sister, if you like, the northern tribes. So once Israel, which is Adam, was severed in half, a nation divided cannot stand. And when God puts it back together again, the heart is going to start pumping. The house of David is going to start operating, and so is the Levitical priesthood, and these things will be restored. And the bride then must make herself ready. We're not ready yet. We're just getting the curlers out of her hair. You know, we're not ready. Yeah, we're just on the road. We're in the way, but we're not there yet. There is a time when the bride makes herself ready, and we read about that in Revelation chapter 12. She's standing on the moon clothed with the sun. And the dragon and a third of the angels that fall with him can't touch her. And that's pretty good news. Sure, she's out in the wilderness, but the Lord looks after her. So the Lord is a covenant keeper. And when we get to the events of the book of Revelation, we're living in a different world than we are now. We're moving towards it, but we're not there yet. And there's going to be some big changes coming. And one of them is that we're going to return to the land, and we're going to possess a remnant of Edom. And David's fallen tabernacle is going to be restored before Yeshua returns. As I said before, David is a king over Israel, and he may have a descendant, not Yeshua, that reigns before he's raised up. But Yeshua is the King of Kings, and that requires the events in the book of Revelation to bring about that trumpet blast and bring our glorious King back down here to possess the earth, which is his inheritance, and have dominion over all the kingdoms of this world, the principalities and powers that we wrestle with, the rulers of darkness in the heavenly places. So let's move on to the next slide. Here we are in Amos 9:11. In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and will build it as in the days of old. So this hasn't been fulfilled yet. This is not Yeshua. It's related to him. It's not Yeshua. Israel and Judah are joined, and then the kingdom government of David and temple worship are reinstated. This happens before the tribulation, as the following sentence in the passage proves, which I've already talked about. That they may possess the remnant of Edom, and of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord that doeth this. And again, Edom is destroyed in the book of Obadiah. It says Judah and Israel are like Joseph, are like a flame, and they burn up. The Edom and the kingdom is the Lord's. So this must be fulfilled beforehand, before that. Again, many Americans don't know who Edom is, because America is Edom and Jacob, and so is Australia. So anyway, let's move on. Amos 9:13. Let's continue through the prophecy. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that the ploughman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him that soweth seed. And the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and the hills shall melt. It's interesting, it's grapes. After the burning up of the tares and the wheat, that's the summer harvest over. Then we get into the grapes. And it's interesting, many people put the destruction of the tares as being the same thing as the destruction of the grapes that are trodden down. But when I look at the Hebrew harvest cycle, the grapes and the wheat don't happen at the same time. So we may have a burning up of the wheat occurring after this Pentecostal period, when we're returning to the land, the wheat is in the stalks, the chaff and the tares are being burnt up. And then we come back to the land, and then we're coming to this time of blessing where the ploughman shall overtake the reaper. It's not the millennial reign yet, but we're moving into a kind of a time of blessing. And then at some stage later, the grapes are getting ready to be trodden underfoot. And the events of the tribulation occur because the bride goes to sleep, you see. And she has to be woken up, and she's beaten up in the streets, if you read the Song of Songs. So this whole thing is a phased series of events. The problem with this teaching is that, for me, is that I want to be there yesterday. I want it to happen now. But as I read the scriptures, I see that there's a bit of a process going on. So we'll soon find out what's happening. But from my understanding, we're going to possess the remnant of Edom, and we're going to return to the land before we get to the millennial reign, before we get to the events of the tribulation. We're about to go through trouble, but it may not be the tribulation itself. Amos 9:14, next verse, "And I'll bring again the captivity of my people of Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof." So this is all related to possessing the remnant of Edom. This is all related to the regathering of Israel. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. "And I'll plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land which I have given them, saith the Lord thy God." Even when Satan comes out of down from heaven, midway through the tribulation, the woman's in the wilderness. I can only imagine that's the wilderness of Judea, or in the wilderness nearby Israel. So she's in Israel. So she never really leaves the land. She just goes to the wilderness section of it. So Israel never gets actually uprooted totally. So we're going back to stay, though there may be some uprooting that occurs to a lot of Israelites in the tribulation itself.